Sometimes it's okay to go back to your roots. Working on only one project for a long time has its pros and cons. I get to load up the same project over and over and over and over. I start to question my mental sanity. Why does my game have a cowboy? I don't even like cowboys. What happened to his little eye over there? When was the last time I played a video game? Do I even like video games? Is that a thing still? No, wait, seriously? Do I like video games? Oh, well, look at that. It's the game jam alarm, and it's going off. Remember, like, from that one time that I did this before? That was really close. I could almost feel crippling depression kind of getting in there. But it's gone now, and I'm sure it will never come back. No, it's actually nice to take a break from time to time. And this week, I thought, let's go back to the basics. Let's do a game jam. So this is Godot Wild Jam number 80, Back to My Roots. So I'm aware my channel is very much me working on Far Gone Frontier mixed with starting these random projects really sporadically throughout the year. And you might be thinking, oh, you're never gonna get anything done if you keep doing so many different things all the time. And you're right, that's probably true. Also, fuck you. Okay, but by that I mean, sure, working on games full-time is like the dream or whatever, but for the time being, I'm just more interested in making cool shit. Hopefully that makes me better as a developer, but honestly, and more importantly, I think it makes it so I don't quit. And with that said, in case you don't know, the Godot Wild Jam is about a week long, and this time the theme was Controlled Chaos, which, if I'm being completely honest, I wasn't thrilled with. Also, on a side note, I realized I haven't done a Godot Wild Jam alone since, actually I had to look this up. It wasn't since I did that FedEx game. So we're talking literally over a year ago, and I feel pretty rusty. I do what I normally do, which is to go into Photoshop and start sketching out some basic ideas. At first, I think I drew this little computer, and I remember thinking maybe there could be some kind of disaster game, like making natural disasters or something. But, and this sort of happens a lot, the art just wasn't really speaking to me. So I scrapped that and started thinking, what do I actually want to make regardless of the game jam? And I don't know if I was just feeling nostalgic, but I kept thinking I wanted something really atmospheric and a little abstract. Something sort of similar to that Sunseeker game I did over a year ago. There was just something so calming about how this game turned out. That, and I'm a little sick of all the dark, moody lighting in Far Gone Frontier. So I start playing around with shapes and ideas, pretty early on landing on something orthogonal, because I love how that looks. Okay, and what I'm about to say next, I mean with all my heart. I am actively trying to make games where you don't just control a top-down character. I realize this, I do this in every game. The problem is, I just worked on 2 games, which unfortunately I did not make videos for. The first one being a game jam I failed to release in time, and second, this really cool dice game that I did with friends, both of which there's no little top-down main character. I should get credit for this, but I can't help it for this game, okay? I drew the little land, I made this little guy, I gotta move him around. There's something about him that feels really adventurous, and I gotta explore that. So I draw up the basic animations, him walking around and just kind of chilling. I also realized I have so many ways to add polish to games that don't need it. For instance, the character's idle animation has a little breath. Instead of just leaving that as part of the idle sprite, I make it spawn in on a timer if the player's standing still, and there's no reason to do this, except for that I think it's fun. Same thing when the player walks, there's like a puff of dust that comes up. They're ultra unnecessary additions to game jams, but I think it gives me time to figure out what the game's gonna be. So while I'm doing this, my brain gets time to linger. Unfortunately though, now that I look back, I think I was lingering on the wrong things. For instance, in every other game I've done, you can sort of just walk off ledges, and I was thinking it would be kind of cool to have a system where the tile could detect if there was something adjacent to it, and if not, institute some kind of wall. It doesn't sound that complicated, and I actually do get it working. The problem being that it functioned entirely with area 2Ds, and it would break constantly, almost randomly, when I played the game. A big part of this was that I was really interested in this idea of having level blocks spawn in. For some reason, it just felt really cool and sort of mystical. Mind you, I don't even know what the point of the game is yet. I'm just sort of playing around with ideas and seeing if anything makes sense. I end up adding a dash to the player. That way, they selectively choose when they're leaving these level blocks. The only problem is if you try to dash to dodge something, oftentimes you would fall off the ledge and kind of kill yourself. It's fine. It's a game jam. We can't be perfect. And like I said, I still don't even know what I'm doing. I keep coming back to the theme, controlled chaos. What does that really entail? I kept coming back to this idea that there'd be 2 types of lands you could exist on. One would be peaceful, there's no pressure to do anything, and maybe there's a shop, you know, if I have time to get to that. And the other land, as the namesake would indicate, would be more of chaos. I was thinking some kind of staying alive as long as possible mixed with capturing territory. Okay, that's a lot to do. Right now we have a guy that can dodge. Also, I didn't mention this, but we are like 3 days in, and I spent the first 2 days being sick. So I do what everyone here would do. All you game developers think of the same thing. Let's say it together. Let's add a sword. Was that not even the right answer? Oh, fuck. Well, we're taking at least 2 more days off the game jam because I have this fever dream to add a sword that functions with or without the player as its own state machine. Okay, hear me out. Let me explain why I landed on this. I'm a pretty big fan of risk reward, and I thought maybe there could be an interesting dynamic here between using the sword to defend myself or using the sword to capture territory. But of course, that's not going to work if the sword is just a sprite I have on the player. Instead, it needs to exist in the world and do things depending on whatever the player's doing. So I draw some really basic art, but the sword itself doesn't really have much animation. Instead, I just sort of make it lerp into different positions depending on what state it's in. It has this little position for following the player, and then different ones for when you swing the sword. Although it doesn't look very cool if we swing the sword and nothing happens. So yeah, we gotta draw like the little slash effect. Okay, so the sword does sword stuff. It's very exciting. But let's make it do the not sword stuff. I put together what I called in the game a monolith. It's basically an old relic that I allow the sword to charge up. It took a little bit to get working, specifically letting you cancel the charge, but I was feeling pretty relieved once this actually came together. That is, until I realized how much time I actually had left. So the character's starting to get a purpose, sort of, but it was at this moment I realized there's still so much more to add. Like, this happens a lot when you do game jams. I'll sort of gloss over what it takes to make a mechanic come to life, and then you take a step back and think like, how come there's no gameplay loop yet? If there's any chance I'm gonna break my curse of not finishing game jams, I need to start putting together these pieces much faster. So that's what we do. We need an enemy, so I sketch up these two little guys. Spoilers, we're only gonna use one of them, so I never made the dog, which is probably good. I don't think a lot of you guys wanted to stab a dog. Draw this little enemy doing goofy stuff. We start putting him in the game, and you realize you don't have a health system. So boom, we code that, health system's in. I draw the enemy throwing this big triangle at the player. That looks really bad. I redraw it, so now he stabs the ground and these little lightning bolts come down from the sky. It doesn't make any sense, but we need to keep going. Finally, I'm ready to play test, and then I realize that you can just dodge through everything. Because the dodge system is infinite, there's nothing to stop you from dodging over and over. So I go ahead and remake that, but I can't lie, the dodge system and the health system are kind of overkill for a game jam. Like, because I thought in the back of my head I'm gonna add a shop to the game, everything was built in a way where we could increase and adjust the stats. And honestly, I don't really get to a lot of this. My brain is very much in Far God Frontier mode, make something that's modular, that's gonna be scalable, but that's not really what game jams are for, and instead I should be way more scorch the earth, make dumb garbage code. Meanwhile, I'm coming up on the last 2 days of the game jam with not really a gameplay loop, let alone something that's really fitting the theme. So I can't lie, I was actually really distraught, thinking this is the part where I walk away and have another game jam I don't finish. But honestly, fuck that. I'll skip sleep and power through it. Even if the game's bad, I just want to have something done. I'm gonna push through because I'm tired of failing the goals that I set for myself. It's really a bad feeling. So I make a quick list. What do I actually need? So here we go. We need a spawn enemy system. They need to be able to take damage and to die. We need 2 different level blocks, one for fighting and one for shopping. I need a node that's determining whether or not you can move on to the next area. I need a really small currency system. This currency is going to come out of the monoliths that you cleanse, and it determines whether or not you can move on to the next area. Okay, I cram all of that into this garbage game. Some code makes sense and I'm proud of. Other code, yeah, not so much. That's the point though. I'm skipping sleep, my eyes hurt, my body's dying. This building character. I look at the clock, I have a few hours and realize it is time to implement the most basic shop I could possibly think of. I had some art left over from day 1 of concepting. It's this little dome-looking building, I guess with waterfalls, I don't know. Probably the reason why it was kept in the concept phase. I make a really simple menu for upgrading your character, and with that, the loop is kind of closed. I rush to itch.io to submit, only to see that it is not due today. It turns out because it was Easter Sunday, it got postponed by 24 hours. But that leaves me in a weird spot, because on one hand, it's nice to have more time, but on the other hand, I was burnt out. I go do my whatever Easter Sunday stuff with the family, the whole time kind of reflecting on what can I do with 24 hours. I get home and play the game for a little bit, and I realize the only thing that we can do at this stage with these decisions is just to take what we have and add more to it. That night, I take the level block where you're fighting things and I make a second one. I also take this time to actually work on music, which I haven't done for a game jam in a long time. Actually recording me playing acoustic guitar along with like some piano and drums. I come up with this track that uses 6 different musical parts, and then I thought it'd be cool is if when you jump into level blocks, we take certain ones and bring them up, and then other ones we cut out. So really, it's one song, but we can change what's happening in that one song depending on where you are as a player. And honestly, it's really stupid and really simple, but it might be my favorite thing I did this whole game jam. With these last little additions, I export the game and upload it to itch. Kinda happy to say goodbye to this weird little project, and a little nervous to see how this game gets received. Doing game jams can be really hard. I mean, working on games in general is really tricky. Luckily, there's help out there, like the sponsor of today's video, Skillshare. Skillshare is the largest online learning community for creatives. Bouncing around from random YouTube videos can be so hit or miss. A lot of times, there's not much structure, and you don't really know what you're gonna get. But that's where Skillshare really excels. With a near endless amount of classes, I found it to be a really useful way to pick up a new hobby and actually enjoy getting better. I personally always lean towards art and drawing classes. There's just always new techniques and things I've never seen before. But of course, it doesn't stop there. From art and animation to coding and designing, video editing, or even sound engineering. It's pretty amazing how many classes are out there. They also have learning paths, which are curated classes that focus on helping you master a skill, which really helps you feel like you're learning something instead of just bouncing from tutorial to tutorial. Joining Skillshare is a great way to support the channel, and the first 500 members get 1 month free. I want to thank Skillshare so much for sponsoring the video. And with that, let's get into it. Okay, so the big question is, what happened? This was always supposed to be a nice break from Far Gone Frontier. Getting away from the stress, jumping into a game jam, which even now as I say, like that seems a little oxymoronic. But why do I feel like I I made so many bad decisions. Before I get too far ahead of myself, I will say the reception to the game was really positive, mostly noting that the atmosphere and the polish seemed really high, which kind of makes sense. I wasted a lot of time on polish, but I don't even think that's where I went wrong. Looking back at every other game jam I've done, I think it's important to note that I always try to do something I've never done before. My very first game jam ever was this little stealth game where I learned how to do pathfinding, and most of my favorite game jams since have had some novel idea that I explored and had fun with. I think maybe for this game that should have been the sword, but the mechanic that I came up with was an ability to not use it. Like, attacking enemies is fun, but the main crux of the game is you just put it in the monolith and you wait for it to charge. Thinking that I kind of missed the mark on the risk-reward aspect. I actually think giving the player an objective while this whole charge system was going on would have made so much more sense. I even theorized maybe he could have a pickaxe and he could be mining resources, but again, there's only so much I can do in one game jam. If I could go back though, the one thing I would change, this isometric tile system was a complete bust. The perspective never really fits so well in an action-based game. And this is especially true for controller, which I did make the game playable on, but I can't even play my own game with a controller. It's just really clunky. And I spent all this time animating the levels to fade in a cool way, only to end up trashing it because it was really buggy. If I just made isolated level blocks with no weird edge jumping, not only would the game be more fun, it would have saved me like 2 days of coding. And I could have added more to this art. I mean, it's just green grass. That's all I have everywhere. It really is frustrating, but I wouldn't have this clarity if I didn't make all these mistakes the first time. Overall, I ended up placing 22nd out of 202 entries, but I did get 3rd in art and 5 in audio, so that felt pretty good. And overall, I'm happy I did it. Quick shout out to my Patreon subscribers. You guys are the best. I'll upload all the art and the coding files for the Patreon. If any of this is useful to you or you want to see how I did any of it, it'll be up there. Thank you guys so much for watching. Until next time, I'll see you later.